You're listening to Out of the Box, a place for marketers to get inspired, get going, and break out of the box.
Arthur Querou is joining us today. He is currently focused on making advertising simpler for advertisers to advertise on TV. Arthur, you are a serial founder, serial entrepreneur, and I'm super excited to get your take on CTV. Could you give us a quick intro? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And thanks again for having me on the podcast. So I'm Arthur Querou, CEO and co-founder of Vibe.co. I previously founded several ad techs, one that was oriented for rich media and mobile at the time where you could not really do rich media with HTML5. We're the first company actually to do playable ad units. So that was quite a long time ago. And the company was acquired by a company called Addictive that is mostly known in the industry now as they are leading the re-engagement space. And then I created a performance trading desk with all the proprietary programmatic stack, so DSP and everything, that was called KMTX. That was acquired by SeedTag in July. And before selling KMTX, we started working on a self-serve platform, really oriented for performance for CTV. And when we sold KMTX, we kept that platform that eventually became Vibe. And so Vibe has been live for now a bit more than 6 months. We've had lots of tests, 1 year and a half of development before actually launching, and it's growing fast. And I'll be happy to talk about that, and especially in the mobile space and app install space, which has been a big focus for us. So yeah.
So I guess that's as good a place as any to start, right? Because I've been working in mobile marketing for the better part of the last 10 years, but I have to say that my experience in the world of CTV, of connected TVs, is pretty limited. I've kept myself pretty busy on other fronts. So maybe you could just give me sort of, your 2-minute pitch of CTV and why it's worthwhile.
Definitely. And I think it's not only CTV or OTT or whatever acronym ad tech invented. It's really about TV. Basically, TV is one of the most performing ad channel that exists. Billions are spent by huge advertisers, but there's a huge issue with TV. It's the fact that it's been for a long time unmeasurable, and advertisers have been struggling with that, and especially in the mobile space where all the mobile marketers are super return on ad spend oriented, and they want to have the certainty that their ad dollars are actually driving return on ad spend, and that's what's changing with CTV. The way to see CTV is actually quite simple. It's just imagine people using their TV as they use their smartphones with apps. So it's not really popular in Europe, even though it's growing, but it's very popular in the US. Everybody is switching to CTV, and now people use apps to watch TVs. And the good thing about that is that everything is delivered through the internet, which is why we call that OTT, over the top. And that allows us to also track what people see and what they do on other devices, thanks to IPs, because TVs are connected to household IPs, which are fixed. And same goes when they're in their house. They will be connected to Wi-Fi, and therefore we have a good link between both devices ecosystems.
So I want to pick up on a bunch of points that you brought up there, but I guess the first one is really the difference between connected TV versus OTT. Because when I've always thought connected TV, I've thought specifically televisions. But is that the case, or would you say that watching quote unquote television content on your mobile, does that also count as CTV?
So factually, that doesn't count as CTV, but people will usually just mix everything up. If you want to be really precise, CTV is the device. It's a TV that's connected. So that's it. It's not a mobile, it's not a tablet, it's not a computer. It's a TV that's connected, either directly into the OS with like Samsung TVs, or like with an external device such as like Fire Stick or like Roku or whatever.
Sure.
OTT is more general. It's more like people watch rich content, rich video content, basically on any device. It's more the way it's distributed, and like you can see like YouTube as OTT. You can see Twitch as OTT, and it's a broader term
Right.
to describe the whole ecosystem.
And when you're talking about actual apps on the television, are you talking about specifically apps that are going to be installed on the CTV? So, call it Netflix or, a music app or whatever. Or are you also looking at advertising apps that will be installed on a mobile device through the television
So
experience?
we're talking about two different things. So we advertise on CTV apps or OTT apps. So let's say you have, so Netflix, we can't advertise on yet, even though we're working on it. But let's say you have like Pluto TV, for example, which is like one of the biggest CTV app in the US. So you have that installed, and then we'll run ads for mobile apps, and we'll then like try to generate installs through those like ads. So we're advertising mobile apps on CTV apps, basically.
Right. So basically, when we're talking about who this is relevant for, it's really any app developer who wants to get, or any brand that wants to get their app on more devices, right? At the end of the day, more mobile
Exactly.
devices.
Exactly. In this discussion, we'll talk more about like driving app installs, but we also work with all kind of advertisers of all sizes. Some like just want to generate like website traffic, like in-store traffic, this kind of thing. But yeah, basically any app developer of any size who want to like leverage the reach of TV to drive like app installs.
So I guess that it's an interesting concept because I've started to see more app install ads on my TV, obviously, but for the most part, I'd say the vast majority of the ads that I still see on TV when I'm not watching, obviously, what's the term, inline television, or
Linear.
regular television, cable or
Yeah.
satellite, um, are mostly big brands, right? That's what I see. It's major brands doing awareness campaigns as opposed to maybe a more niche brand or a smaller app developer looking for performance. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely, yeah. It comes from basically all the legacy of of TV. TV advertising has always been one super expensive and required like super high minimums. Like if you want to buy like a TV spot, like on national TV, it will probably cost like several hundreds of thousands of dollars, which well is a lot, especially if you just want to test. And more generally, I think the metric is quite impressive, but I think it's like 95% of the ad spend on TV comes from only the Fortune 500 brands,
Wow.
and that's really what we're trying to change with Vibe. We're trying to build kind of the Google ads or the Facebook ads of or the TikTok ads now of TV, and basically making TV advertising accessible to everyone, and making it so accessible in terms of ease of use, because like buying TV ads, aside of just the prices and the cost and everything, it's just like it's a terrible mess, and we're trying to make it like super crazy simple for anyone to use. I always say my team, like my mom, should be able to buy TV ads with Vibe, and that's our mission. And yeah, and we're trying to also replicate the the use of like digital ad platforms in general. So like as what we talked about, like measuring like the the performances that you're getting, having the same level of control of targeting, like so that you can target like interest, households, like geo, etc., etc. So yeah, so we're historically TVs was only accessible to Fortune 500, and now Vibe kind of opens it up to every advertiser and every marketer.
So that's another interesting point in terms of targeting. So targeting households, you said. I imagine one of the challenges that you probably have is understanding who your viewer is at any one moment, right? Because if a household is made up of 4 or 5 people, how do you know who you're targeting and who's installing?
That's probably the biggest difference that you'll have when like using other app platforms, is that you cannot guarantee in any way, unless we would install cameras like inside every
And you're not
people
allowed to
house.
do that, right?
I don't think we're going to do it. But yeah, you can't guarantee that you'll target a specific person. So you're targeting households, and you're targeting like household characteristics. So you're able to say like, I want to target households who have kids. I want to target households who have women in it. But you can't guarantee that like it will be only that. So that still gives you a lot more precision than just like buying a channel and just like praying that it reaches the right audience. It's
Right.
still like very, very precise. But yeah, you are targeting households and not just like people.
Hmm. And what sort of data do you get from the actual providers of content? So if you look at, it looked like a Netflix, for example, you said that you're working on integrating with them or to start advertising on their platform. Is there any user level data that you're able to get, whether an aggregator specifically from those types of platforms, or do you get your data from elsewhere?
It's a bit of a mix of everything because we're trying to be as relevant as possible. So not all like channels will have like the same level of information or this kind of thing. So as of right now, what you get in terms of content, because it's also very important. So publishers are starting to open up, and it's a big fight. It's a that we're taking, is that to have access to like the TV shows, to the content category, etc. And when it comes to user data, so most of the OTT and CTV apps are logged in environments. So they will have like those informations about like age, gender, like household income, and this kind of thing. And they can send it to you, and they send it to us, and we have partnerships around that to get that information. And yeah, so you're getting a part of that. And then we also work based on IP with some like data providers. We're trying not to have too many because then it's a mess. And a big part of our like job is to, as we're like mostly oriented for performance, our job is really to assess the quality of the data and the relevance of the data. And yeah, so it allows us to have like a good coverage of all the intents that you would like to buy. And then we also sometime, especially in the mobile space, we build custom audiences. So for example, when we work with like social casinos, we'll be able to build some like gambler audiences or these kind of things.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So I want to shift gears a little bit because we've talked a lot about specifically about targeting and how you build those audiences. And I think you also mentioned a little bit about attribution and how you can do measurement afterwards, which obviously certainly in mobile marketing in general, and this year specifically, as we move into a much more challenging year in terms of marketing, return on spend, etc. How do you think about that? How do you measure? How do you integrate with the MMPs in the ecosystem? How does that whole thing work?
Yep. So measurement, like the CTV and OTT driving app installs through these channels is like quite new. So AppsFlyer and Adjust like released their solution like at the middle of 2022. Good thing is that like Vibe was the first partner for both of them, so that was great for us. So we're integrated with them, and Adjust and AppsFlyer can like really measure and do the attribution when it comes to like the performance that advertisers are actually getting. One of the things that we've seen that's also very interesting is measuring incrementality, and also measuring like all the assists that you are actually doing on the other installs, because TV is not only about like driving direct installs, it's also about like building the brand and helping out the other channels. So Adjust has released a tool that's actually called Assists to like basically show those kind of actions and uplifts that you're doing on this side. And yeah, and when it comes to the actual attribution, so how it works again, like we're basically matching IPs, so looking at the IPs that are generating installs, the IPs that have seen an ad on on their TV, and then like matching those. The whole question is really about like the attribution window, and how you like allocate an install to one actor or another. Our opinion, which is not necessarily the same for other like partners that you could find out there. We're pushing for a very short attribution window. I know that's kind of rare for demand partner. Usually people tend to push for longer windows.
Hmm.
But we tend to do that so that, like, let's say you consider that um, within 30 minutes, if an install happens after having seen an ad, you can really be okay with the fact that that was a kind of a direct response. That's why we're pushing for short windows, and then like elongate them after that. So and putting them like much lower in the waterfall when it
Hmm.
comes to that. So yeah, that's really how we see the that right now, and we are having lots of discussion, and we're trying to help and be as transparent with our clients when it comes to like the data, because they also, most of them, it's new, it's a new channel, new acquisition channel, and so we're providing the data so that they can also do like the matching on their side to verify that we are doing the right attribution, adjust AppsFlyer or their MMP is also doing the right attribution. But yeah, it's quite new. There are lots of experiment. We can't really say that there is a really strong market practice at the moment. Our opinion is short windows, but at the top of the waterfall, instead of super long. Like, I've heard partners pushing for 2 weeks windows, which is like insane. Like 2 weeks attribution window is way too much. So there's that, and then you also have a lot of question about QR codes. Lots of
Mm.
people, especially with Coinbase, who's used it
Right.
at the last Super Bowl, it generated a lot of attentions around QR codes. It's good. It allows you to kind of perceive a trend of like direct response. But I mean, let's be honest, like people will not, like when they're in their couch, they will not like grab their like remote and then like their phone and then like scan the QR code within like 10 or 15 seconds. Like that's not happening. So I think it's a lot about like working on the quality of the creative and then like designing a fair window for everyone rather than like pushing for QR codes or this kind of thing. QR codes will and do not replace like a click command or something like that.
Right. So that's interesting that you say click command. I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, but one of the experiences that I think quite often we see nowadays is something like send to phone, right? Where you can click it, and if you're on the same Wi-Fi network, then obviously that shortens that funnel. Is that what you're referring to? And are there any
No.
other?
When I was talking about click command, I really was talking more of the AdOps term
Ah,
of basically like click URL or like the
gotcha.
click event. But that's an interesting point that you're raising. Um, we're seeing more and more like OTT platforms like implementing those kind of interactions with the ads. That's something we're looking at that we haven't like implemented yet, because like we work with 600 plus channels and like OTT apps, and it would be unless like everybody or almost everybody has it implemented, like it's complex to implement, or like because you would only be able to target like the few channels that have implemented it. But I think that's definitely a direction the market will take along the years as like more and more advertisers just flow in CTV.
Right. Are there any other tips and tricks that you guys recommend, or that you see perhaps popping up that can help to shorten that funnel between viewing and downloading?
One other thing, like as digital marketers, we tend to focus a lot on like what's my best targeting, do I have the best AI to do all the optimization and all this kind of thing. But on TV, like it's very different. Of course, targeting and AI matters, like how you buy and blah blah blah. But one thing that is often very overlooked is the quality of the creative, because TV gets you like an attention that's unparalleled with like any other channel. And one thing as well that's very important is that like sound is on by default. So it's super important to work on sound in your creative, which is really overlooked by digital marketers because we're used to have like sound off by default and not like putting much effort on that side. So voiceover is super important. Being super direct. Don't be too creative. Don't be like Don't try to do like something like that kind of explains the brand or like gives a feeling of something. Just really like be direct, like just like show the app, show the gameplay. Just say that like it's on the app store, that people should download it. But yeah, we had a client like commissioning a big agency. I think they spent like 200 or 300K on like actually creating the creative, not on media spend.
Wow.
And when they launched their campaign, well, it was like not performing at all because like it was made by this creative agency. The ad looked stunning, but it was not just dr- made to drive performance. And then we proposed them to like create a creative for them, which we usually don't do, but it was at the beginning of Vibe. And so we created a creative for them, which was like super simple, just the app, the logo, what it does, download on the app store, and it performed like crazy super well. So, and it costed us like probably like $1,000. That's it. So you don't have like to create those crazy creatives. Just do something simple. And A/B testing is also like very effective.
For sure. Well, that's an interesting insight to focus on the sound. It's not something that I think I would have thought of immediately. So that's definitely a
Voiceover,
good.
like voiceover. Download on the App Store. Like download game name on the App Store. Super important.
Interesting. How do you think that, with like you said, I think that you said 95% or something of spend currently on CTV is from Fortune 500 brands. So what do you think are the big blockers or barriers to entry for smaller brands these days to actually get into CTV, given that platforms like yours are
Yeah.
starting to give more tools?
So I actually like removing all those barriers, and we're seeing it because as I said, like we work with a lot of like app publishers, but we also work with tons of like local businesses, like small e-commerce brands, etc. So we're really like making it like accessible. But in people's mind, what's blocking them from like activating CTV is both like the minimums that you need to have and the commitments, because most of the platforms that exist today, and I think we're the only one on the market to not have any commitment or any minimum. Our minimum is like $500 for a campaign, so it's quite low compared to the like 15-20K that we're seeing with the other platforms. But yeah, commitment is pretty terrifying, especially when you're a small developer or small business owner. You could use like the trade desk, for example, but you'd probably have to commit on like several millions of ad spend a year to like actually use the platform, which is not possible for everyone. And so yeah, it's about that. And then it's the, let's say you have access to one of the platform in the market, it's the operational complexity, because out of the box you have access to no inventory, or the bad one, the bad inventory. So you'll have to set up deals with all the publishers, with all the SSPs, and then you'll have to figure out like, because when you set up a deal, it never works out of the box. You always have to troubleshoot it, and then you'll have to set up like your expertise around like how to buy it. Like, just doesn't make sense for most of the advertisers to like spend that much energy and time and money on just building the expertise. And that's why we're bundling, and that's why we call Vibe the all-in-one ad platform. You have the AI that does it, that does the job. You have like the ad server that will host your creative at no extra cost, except blah blah blah. So I won't pitch like, like
Hmm.
all the feature list of Vibe, but we're basically making it like super simple, and just as simple as using like Facebook ads, and that's what's been appreciated by all those clients who would never had like advertise on TV, and now are running like always on campaigns and everything.
Amazing. Uh, I guess my follow-on question, because I do like to, as much as I can, to give our listeners some actionable advice, and really, let them come away from this conversation with what they can do today to sort of move their CTV campaign or activity forward. So if you were talking today to a marketing manager or a CMO about getting started with CTV, what would be your 2-minute rundown on how they should get started?
Yeah, sure. It's actually very funny because usually people come to us with the pitch. We don't even have to pitch it. But the thing is, like, marketers are getting less and less performances from like the regular channels like social, etc. So they're now looking for alternatives. They're also always looking for like eye reach platforms, which are very hard to find now. So sometimes you have a new one that pops up, like TikTok, for example, which is like making a killing, and it's being used more and more. But it's hard to find like scalable like solutions to run like more budget and more incremental budget. So that's really that. Like when we talk to marketers, it's really about, look, you get like the same targeting capabilities, the same measurement and attribution capabilities. You get the same reach. You actually get more reach on TV than on social. And yeah, and at the end of the day, it's the perfect like channel to leverage. And it's basically the odd thing about in the market right now. Everybody's pretty much talking about it, so everybody's pretty much interested by it. But it's really, and I'm not even talking about Vibe, why they should invest on CTV, like more rich than on social, same measurement capabilities, same targeting capabilities, same like optimization capabilities. So yeah, same control. So it's just like an incremental audience that you can reach there.
And why do you think that it's a big thing now in the States, but not so much in Europe? What's the blocker from breaking out of the US?
It's a lot of things. Why it's big in the US? Because cable TV was so expensive that like those services started like popping up, and people got really interested, and that's what made them change their habits about how they consume like TV content. Basically, in Europe, it's kind of different because like I don't know about like if it's true for every single European country, but I think most of them have like free access to TV channels. So we are very, very used to like just taking our remote and pressing like one, two, or whatever number the channel is. While when you use like CTV, it's not anymore about like the number of the channel that you are going to look. It's about the app that you are going to select.
Right.
So that's really a big change. And like Europe in general will have like, I think, a much harder time to switch from that habit to another one, even though like it's the role is like the ball is starting to roll. um and then it's a lot about like the politics that happen like in Europe, not necessarily at the government side, but more between the big broadcasters. Like they usually have like a huge presence, a huge coverage, and there isn't much competition as what you can see like in the US. So for now, they really believe that they're the only ones. Nobody can come and take their seat, and I think they're very wrong, and they are about to get absolutely wrecked by like the big broadcasters coming from the US. Because like Fubo TV, for example, acquired a French app called Molotov for 200 million, and I mean it's a lot of money, and it's basically just to see what's going on in the CTV space. And like when you're willing to invest 200 million, kind of, just to see if it can be interesting. Well, you can imagine how much money they have, and when they will come, like in those countries, like they will absolutely like it will be a tsunami. And it's starting to happen. Like Paramount Plus is now in whole Europe, and like other ones are going to follow. And with like HVOD formats, which are like a hybrid video on demand, which is both like paying and you have ads, but it's a bit cheaper. And I think people are going to like switch from like traditional TV to CTV very fast, but it will take a bit more time. But it will happen. Like there is no chance it's not happening.
Interesting. I think that you mentioned at sort of the beginning of your answer to the question that one of the things that drove Americans to use these streaming services was really the expense that had built up to pay for cable or to satellite or whatever. And we're getting to the point now that, with three, four, five, six streaming services, each one seemingly starting to raise their prices as we get into a not so great economy, that we're getting sort of back to where we started, right? It's now you're not paying
I think it's worse
$100.
now.
It's
I've seen a
worse now.
meme like saying like I should create a company called Cable TV and just like package all the subscriptions.
Everything that's old is new again, right? That's
Yep.
so we've seen, I think Netflix announced that they're going to start with sort of a mixed model, as you said,
Yep. They started
starting to
already.
advertise. Oh, have they started already?
Yep.
So how do you see that impacting the space, right? How is that going to grow or attract more marketers? How's it going to work?
For the better, like Netflix probably has like some of the best content for like on demand. So it's super interesting for app marketers. We are having like a lot of them like reaching out. Unfortunately, we can't yet because they're like very, very closed and there are lots of conditions as to like getting access to their inventory. And almost no one has it. You have to go through AppNexus, which is owned by Microsoft, blah blah. So it's a huge pain, and you will not be able to track app installs and this kind of thing because they are really really protective about the data. So I don't know if it's like relevant yet for app marketers, but it will be, and it's for the better. Like the more inventory we're getting on the market, the more people will be able to leverage it, like buy it and value it. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing for the space. I don't know if it's a great thing for people in general because when you watch content, you don't want to have like mostly ads. For the market itself, it's super exciting.
Interesting. Amazing. Well, Arthur, this has been a very insightful conversation. As we're still sort of in prediction time, it's on not the end of January yet, so I'm going to allow myself to say that we're still at the beginning of the year. Give us what you think is going to be the top trend this year in CTV.
That's a good point. Top trends, especially in the app space, it's all going to be about like the measurement and the attribution. Like really figuring out what is the attribution system that everybody agrees on. And once this is done, this will really really like make the ecosystem blow and everybody will really consider like CTV and OTT as one of their main acquisition channel. But until then, it's still experimental and people are still like trying to figure it out. So there's a lot of effort to do on our side and with like AppSire, Adjust, and all the other MMPs and even like all the other demand partners to figure that out. I think publishers are going to open up to like providing the data about like the shows that you are targeting, etc. Because right now they're like super close and super protective of it, and they don't want basically to give that information. So you're buying Pluto TV, but you don't know exactly what you're buying on Pluto TV, and Pluto TV has like hundreds of shows and stuff. So to make it relevant, we need that information. But I'm sure they will open up. And when it comes to prediction, it's a bold one. Like I'm not necessarily like betting money on this one, but I would not be surprised seeing Apple and Disney merging. Like
Interesting.
they're both like super invested on OTT. Apple is really the way Apple does it, but they're really putting their foot in the market. The new Disney CEO is like really close acquaintance of Apple, starting to smell like a like merger, and that would be like quite insane. Like Disney plus Apple under the same roof. Oof,
That's a powerhouse.
that's a powerhouse, definitely. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll hear rumors at least about it.
All right. Well, I love a bold prediction. Arthur, like I say, this has been a really interesting conversation into CTV and how to get it started. I'll be tracking your predictions as the year goes on.
Definitely. And
Thank you very much.
if Apple merges with Disney, restaurant is on me.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye
Bye.
bye.